What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Feed Your Fat Face podcast. There's 3 of us on this thing this week because we're finally going to do it the right way. I'm really sorry that I wasted Chris and Kevin your time last week, but as always, I'm joined here by Kevin. I'm Aaron, and my best buddy Chris, all the way from Siloam Springs, Arkansas, is on the podcast for a second time. And I got to tell you, last week we shot what might be the single best episode this show has ever known.
Yes.
And I did not set it up correctly, so there was no audio. And I want you guys to know, in all seriousness, I lost sleep over how I was going to tell you. I felt
I still think if we'd have published the episode, that some people would have gotten enjoyment out of just the visual.
Yeah. Chris, how are you, man?
I'm great. I think Kevin's right. I think if you'd have published the video, we could have seen those spit takes. So
you know, we
should have.
Or we could have tried to record over it, old kung fu movie style.
Or I was thinking, do you guys remember Mystery Science Theater 3000?
There you go.
Just gonna say that, yeah.
Yeah, we could have done it MST3K, and that would have been, man. Only the real ones would have gotten it, but those who got it would have.
They would have
absolutely loved it
a couple times.
Yeah. I'm really excited about this episode because not only am I getting to hang out with a brother, but it's one of my favorite topics, one of my favorite things.
Hey.
We're here to talk beer this week, all things beer. To that end, since nobody else heard this last week, let me reintroduce Chris Butler. On top of just being a world-class friend and human being, Chris works for a brewery in Northwest Arkansas called Lost 40 Brewing, which is doing incredible and awesome work in the regional craft beer space. And he is just passionate and knowledgeable about all things cerveza. And so we've been planning this for a long time, but
we started talking about this from the beginning of
day one. This is one of our very first. So we're glad to have you, Chris. What is it that got you into beer? I mean, I know the story, but none of our friends do. So how'd you end up where you are today?
Well, after senior year, I gave you a call. I don't know, maybe 2 weeks after we graduated, gave you a call and asked what you were up to that night, and you said that you and Jason, your older brother, were going to go out and have some beers. I said I'd like to come too, and I can still hear Jason in the background saying, "Hey, what's Butler going to do? Drive us around?" Because obviously at that point I didn't drink. A couple hours later, I had put down a 12-pack, and to this day, I've never heard sweeter words from Jason Powers. But he said, "Butler, I think you've missed your calling. You were born to do this." And yeah, so here I am. 27
and you thought he
years
might be
later.
onto something.
Yeah. Summer of 1997, and that started a journey of I'll be honest. What I thought at the time was a lot of wasted evenings and dollars, but standing where we are now, there was a purpose in it all. You were honing your craft.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and we also had a lot of good moments. I mean, lots of stories that we don't remember or can't tell. Underage drinking is bad, kids. So don't do it.
Underage drinking is bad. Don't be like the Feed
We're not
Your Fat
Public
Face.
service announcement.
We had one of our MO was Chris and I were not big. Like some people are like, hey, let's get together with a whole bunch of people and do something crazy. But that was never our scene at all. Our favorite thing to do was to find places where they were building new neighborhoods. So maybe they had cut streets, but they weren't
buildings.
Right, or everything was just in framing. And so we would go, and we had to talk ourselves out of more than one. There's one story in particular in the Longs Creek area there's 2 that stand out, but the one where I think our love of words got us out.
Can I just say the 2 words?
Yeah.
Ambient light.
Those are the 2 words. I don't know, man, that cop drove up and he knew what we were up to, and he asked what we were out there, and Chris told him we like to come out here to at the end of a stressful shift of waiting tables, we just like to get out away from the ambient light. And I don't know if he was just like, I'm giving props for knowing what those words mean, and he let us off. But oh my goodness. And then there was the time, you remember we had this other spot we used to go. It was a vacant lot, and we got so mad that they were putting up lights that we spent one whole night throwing rocks to shatter out one of those big street lamps.
And I got it.
Was it you did get it, and then 6 months later my parents bought that lot and built on it and still live there. So
yes.
That was fun times in the summer.
Bill and Sandy know that
1997.
story. That's a very special street light to us.
We were after. I was after it for a while, but you it took you a couple, to gauge the wind, and then you settled in pretty quickly and made short work of it.
Got a zero down.
Yeah. So when we started in that summer, we were quantity over quality guys. So we were big on the Natty Light, but we were just looking for whatever we could get a lot of. But obviously you have sort of found yourself on the other end of the spectrum now. When and how did you begin to transition from like a recreational, like a quantity drinker to, I guess what I'm saying is, when did you discover, man, there's some really cool stuff going on here, and I just really love beer. What was that transition space like?
So the very first time I had anything different from light beer, I really liked it. That started with sort of Belgian beers at the first, Chimay Red, O Garden. And then the first time I had a Stone IPA, I was on IPAs. But I was still a college kid and I was still underage. So I basically drank what I could afford still. So I mentioned this last week, but I'll say it again. Tim, who will eventually be on the podcast as well, director of operations for Green. He was my best friend through college after you left, and his sister was our plug. And so I would just give her money and say, get me a 6-pack of IPA and a 12-pack of Miller Lite, or whatever sort of money I had available that week, which varied from time to time. Sometimes I had less. So it was like, get me one Chimay and an 18-pack of Miller Lite, whatever.
Right.
I knew that I liked better things really early on. But then after I turned 21, I started going to the tap room on the backside of San Marcos, the square.
Right there in the square, yeah.
37 draft beers and 100 bottles. And that's where I really kind of honed in on what I liked. And just kept pursuing it from there.
You mentioned Stone, which that triggered a memory when you said it last week. They were really the first, that I was aware of. I'm sure there were other guys, but they were really the first ones I knew of that, other than like the Chimay and the Belgian guys, that were doing outside of the Pilsner space. Stone was kind of the pioneer of this movement that we've seen even up until recently, weren't they? I mean, they were one of the first.
I consider them as part of the craft beer 2.0 boom. We're sort of in
Fat
like
Tire at the same time, and
no, Fat Tire and Sierra Nevada and Boulevard and all those were earlier. Deschutes was earlier.
Okay.
Yeah, and Goose Island was earlier. Stone came around in 1996, and they got to Texas about 1998 or 99, I think. But yeah, they were the brash, in your face, big, bitter IPAs, and they kind of really pushed that move forward. Where Sierra Nevada had sort of introduced the world to hops in a general sense, like the U.S. world, I say, with their style of West Coast hops, and then Stone took it, to the degree. So,
yeah, there was so much. It was such a departure from what I always grew up with. I remember having the first time I had a Stone IPA, which they're still not owned by one of the bigs. They're still independent, though they're probably more macro than micro now. Or did they sell?
No, they got bought out by a Japanese conglomerate.
That's a shame, because they're actually doing. They did. I think they've done some good stuff. They did a Zocovesa, that stout based on the Mexican hot chocolate, that I thought was stellar.
A lot of the big guys. I mean, Anchor closed. Founders is not independent anymore. Bell's is not independent anymore. Boulevard's not independent anymore.
Founders is Dogfish Head, right?
No, Dogfish Head and Sam Adams.
Oh, boo.
Hey, Sam Adams is airport beer.
I gotta admit, I did not have booing beers on my bingo card. So okay,
Well, we're more booing.
We're booing
unchecked capitalism.
We're booing big money taking over little guys.
So talk about that, because a lot of people may not understand it. So the big guys would tell you, well, obviously we're going to get your product in front of more faces, and that's a win. But why should people hate that? What's lost in that sort of massive scale up?
Well, every time one of the small guys gets purchased by one of the big guys, the same press release is issued every time. Nothing's going to change. Everything's going to be the same beer you love. We're going to be able to get it. We have more money, more capital infusion. I sort of equate it to the uninitiated in the craft beer world. Bud Miller, Coors, and to some extent some of these other larger craft breweries, they're like the Titanic, and us smaller breweries, we're like speedboats. So we can navigate market changes. We can really style kind of comes up as brand new. We're able to make it quicker and get it out faster than the big guys. They've got so much volume dedicated to their main SKUs that they can't do it. So their thought process when they started buying up the small guys was that they could use us to be that little speedboat, their little outboat. But what happened was the people who are their regular customers weren't really interested in the craft beer scene, and the craft beer drinkers weren't really interested in that brand anymore for the most part once they got bought out by the big guys. So what happened was they ended up kind of getting stuck in a twilight zone, no man's land kind of thing. And now some of these big guys are selling off some of these craft brands again. So it's an interesting time. I mean, this is probably going to be the first year in 12 or 13 years that the craft beer segment as a whole is going to experience negative growth. We had like 10 or 12 years of like straight positive growth, which was insane. And the last couple of years have been almost flat. So it's going to be there's going to be a little bit of a bloodletting this year, which kind of stinks. But, you know.
I've obviously never brewed. I've never home brewed or brewed in any capacity, but I do cook. And one of the things I know when you're cooking is it's really hard to keep quality and keep the flavors dialed in when you scale up. So if I cook for 4, that's great, but that same recipe for 10 can be a real challenge. Does that apply on the beer side as well? Is it really delicate to keep the quality?
I think that's the number one problem that brand new breweries face, because most of these guys who open up these breweries are home brewers or have some tie to home brewing, and they've been brewing on a 5, 10, or 15 gallon home setup, which is a normal, decent sized home setup. But then your basic batch at a small brewery is going to be 10 times that, and it's not just a 1-to-1 scale up. There takes a little bit of massaging, there takes a little bit of finesse. It's not just science at that point. There's a little bit of artistry needed. So that's the one. I think that's the number one factor that, apart from finances and whatnot, that a lot of breweries struggle with when they first open is, hey, this is a recipe I've been brewing for 10 years, but why doesn't it taste the way it tasted when I won all these homebrew awards? Because you're brewing on a bigger scale. You're using commercial yeast now as opposed to, so it can, there's a lot of factors, but to me, just seeing the things that I've seen over the years, that seems to be one of the struggles. Most of them are skilled enough and talented enough, they overcome it, and then they, find their groove and they settle into the system and they kind of work out the kinks. But yeah, that's the thing I see the most.
What I like about the regional craft beer scene is that you mentioned you can pivot more easily, so you get you can do more seasonal stuff and just kind of move that way. But that's I've always wondered that. So it seems then maybe we can talk a little bit about where you've landed professionally right now. You're with Lost 40. It would seem that there's a level at which it's best to just know where your ceiling is and to sort of stay small or a size you control. I had the opportunity to meet Aaron Franklin recently, and I asked him why he doesn't expand, and he just said, well, I can only control the quality at my current volume, and beyond that, it gets really hard. And so is that true too? Like for Lost 40, is that part of their design? They want to kind of stay a controllable size?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're based out of Little Rock. I'm up here in Northwest Arkansas, but we're based out of Little Rock. We only distribute to Arkansas. The only thing we do outside of states is a lot of times I'll go to festivals. I've been festivals in all the neighboring states, which is one of the things I really pushed for when I came on, just with the mindset that a lot of these neighboring states are going to be coming through Arkansas to hike or bike or just do whatever. So then they'll be familiar with our product and they see it on the shelf. So for us, that at least as far as I know, it's been told to me since I came on, there's no plans for Lost 40 distribution. That said, that is another problem that breweries face, especially a lot of those mid-majors, your New Belgium. Some of those places got up to 45, 50 states. And every time you go to a new state, you're finding a new distributor, you're finding a new salesperson or a team if it's a big enough state. I mean, Arkansas, you really only have 3 or 4 cities you're worried about, 3 or 4 regions you're worried about selling in. But can you imagine distributing to Texas?
No,
I mean,
no.
California. I mean, even New York is a large state, and everyone thinks it's just a city, but just a city, you got to hire multiple people to take care of that city. So,
I mean, if you were trying to distribute just a DFW, that'd be.
I can't. Right. I can't get my mind around the logistics of that.
Yeah, and then you got the problem of not every distributor covers the whole state. So sometimes you might have to get into 2 to 3 different distributors for the state,
Sure.
and then different salespeople for those distributors. It's just, so what happened is they spread themselves thin. If you're not getting into the market and really beating the streets, doing events and kind of pressing the flesh and talking to people and getting the word out, the product will just inevitably end up dying on the shelves because there's so much good stuff available out there right now. If you're not doing everything you can to try to sell your product and move your product and get it into people's hands, then people will find other options. Which is why I love doing what I do so much, because I'm out in front of the people, 3-4 days a week at minimum, just talking to them about beer.
So a big part of your role is beer educator. You're there to help people learn that there is beer beyond the big, the big nameplates, and a lot to be discovered in that. Is that part of what drew you to your role at Lost 40, or what was it about them that you're like, man, this is I like it here?
Well, they had heard my name passed around a couple times when they were starting to come up with restaurants. So they gave me a call. I had a meeting with John Beachford, the owner that is most associated with the brewery and is kind of my boss. Not kind of, he's my boss, but he's the guy. He's for sure my boss.
For sure.
But we had a meeting, and I said, well, what does this job entail? And he said, I don't know. We're making it for you. If you don't take it, you probably won't make it. But so it's been a very malleable thing. It's changed. I've been with them for 6.5 years now, so it's changed a bunch. The first 6 weeks, I was mainly in the restaurant helping the staff because I have the restaurant experience as well. Training them about beer, talking to every customer that was coming in about beer, because the restaurants are a vehicle for us. Although we carry other beers too, it is a vehicle for our beer. And then I started doing all the events. So that can be anything from like your typical trivia night or your pint night giveaway, or up here we have liquor store tasting. So I'll go to the liquor store for a couple hours, and just as people wander in, hey, would you like a sample pour?
Texas is missing the boat on liquor store tastings, by the way.
Yeah. So
it's sounding less and less like work.
Yeah, and so I'll do beer festivals, beer trade shows, all things like that. Do a lot of the networking, meet a lot of people, exchange a lot of business cards, and try to get people to come to our festival, try to get us to go to other festivals, and so on and so forth.
I know you said your guy, the owner, said that they created the position for you, but knowing you for over 30 years, like, it feels like it's a position created for you. Like, that's the thing. You're so great with people, and you're so engaging, and I told you last week, you were a big part of what made me brave enough to branch out. I thought Getting Wild was back when I started drinking Tecate back in 1998, and I was afraid of some of the tastes that were out there, and so I was not interested, but it was your passion and the way that you would talk about it that made me open to branching out. And now I didn't look at my Untapped profile, I probably should have, but I'm a pretty adventurous drinker. I will say I've gotten to the point now where I would never say no to something you put in front of me, even if I didn't recognize what it was.
Well, so you're well over 1,000 in your Untapped profile, Chris. We talked about this in the episode that didn't quite make it. Chris, where are you at in your Untapped profile?
Well, okay, I said this last week too. After I hit 10,000 unique, I kind of stopped caring about it so much because I was missing interaction. So
you unlocked the Grand Wizard of Beer badge, yeah.
So I probably missed.
It's like, we're going to change our name.
I probably missed about 1,000 or so beers in the last 3 years or so since I did it, but I'm at 13,599.
13,599. You guys, those of you who are on Untapped, you've got work to do.
Yeah.
No, there's plenty of people ahead of me, but they're the ones that are taking pictures of every single beer still and logging every single beer at a festival. I worked a festival last weekend, and I think I checked in like 4 beers, and those were beers at the hotel after that I remembered. Because this is more important to me, talking to people about it.
I don't know how much. Yeah, well, that's I think for me, and I don't want to speak for you, so I won't. For me, that was part of the appeal, is that it was a community. It was something that you could do. There was people around, and I will issue a word of warning to those of you, if you're on Untappd, there is a lot of ignorance on Untappd, so you have to kind of take their ratings with a grain of salt. Because I hate when you see something, they're like, this guy rated it a 2.5, and then the whole reasoning was, I don't like this style of beer.
Right. Best Hefeweizen ever, 2.25.
Right. You're like, oh, nice.
If you think it's the best ever, it should be a 5. Categorically, that's where it should fit. But like the best rated Pilsner in the world is like a 4.1. It's like, what? If it's the best in the world, it should be a 5. So they should maybe like start grading on a curve or something.
That should be the standard.
Well, I would say I pay way more attention if a beer has more than 1,000 check-ins and a global rating over like 4.5. I'll put some weight in that, because I'm like, that's solid. But a low rating won't scare me off.
Yeah, right. And they have changed their algorithm a little bit to make it a little bit more weighted, which helps. People with more check-ins will carry a little bit more weight, I think. I read an article
could get
about
in there.
it. Yeah,
you could get in there and just wield your influence like a.
Yeah, but I mean, ultimately, it is a lot like Pokemon Go for beer nerds. And if you remember the Pokemon Go craze, you just had kids walking into streets staring at their phones, and that's kind of how beer nerds get at festivals and things like that. They're not talking to anybody, they're not interacting, they're missing all the stuff around them because they're
point of the festival,
right? So that's
me is the kind of the, I'm not by no means the youngest, but the youngest in craft beer and things like that, the newest into craft beer. I've noticed that, you're talking about different ratings and things. There are styles of beer that are still new to me that I'll try it and I'll be like, yeah, that's not for me. And you'll tell me that's a really good whatever it is. And I'll be like, oh, okay, well, that's just not one that I want.
Right. Yeah, Kevin doesn't like Saisons. Not a big fan.
Okay. Well, for me, like there's a couple styles of beer that I don't like, but I've done this long enough and I have the palate that I can tell you if it's a good pumpkin beer or a bad pumpkin beer. It's still not a pumpkin beer that I want to drink, but I can tell you if it's good or bad. Same with smoked beer.
I like pumpkin.
Same with smoked beer. It tastes like you cooked the ham in a crock pot and then drank the water. Like smoked beers all taste very, very salty, briny, and smoky to me. And yeah, I'm just not a huge fan.
That's a very accurate description, and it is not pleasant.
That's a very vivid description.
Yeah.
It's my job to be good with my words.
Yeah, right. I just want to see that on an Untappd check-in.
Ham water.
Not dissimilar to crockpot ham water.
I think I've put that on there before, honestly. Pretty sure.
That would not surprise me.
That's awesome.
I will say one of the things that I get really excited about on Untappd is if I go and I find a beer and I'm like, oh, Chris hasn't had this one yet. I'm like, oh, this is cool.
Oh, they have those on there?
Very few, but
they have stars next to them.
Yep. So
well, I mean, you get
all 9 of them.
Yeah. You get a lot different distribution down there than I do. So you're privy to things that I can't get. That's why when I come down to visit you, I'll stock up on beer and I'll bring you beer, and that's from here.
It's a great beer swap.
So distribution. So something that I'm noticing down here, and I genuinely don't know if do I have bad beer buyers or is there a market shift? But I'm beginning to notice less and less craft beer and more ciders and seltzers. Are we in the midst of another market shift, or do I just need to yell at a beer buyer?
Both. So the last couple of years, cider took off a couple of years ago, and it had its meteoric rise, and it sort of stabilized. Seltzer did the same thing. We make wheat seltzers, but two mixed bag. Seltzer had its big meteoric rise 3-4 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it was, and then it's sort of plateaued. And the next one right now is NA segment, non-alcoholic beer, is sort of the next one taking off big, and a lot of people are betting on it really big too. So.
The seltzers, those are like the White Claw things.
Yeah. Which
they're liquid TV static.
Yeah, that's
exactly what it is.
Yes, it is.
They're great on the golf course, though.
They are. You put 2 of those in a Yeti
like
tumbler.
The ciders.
Yeah, you put 2 of those seltzers in a Yeti tumbler over ice and maybe a little bit of a depth charge, vodka or rum, and it stays cold versus a beer that'll get warm. So,
By the way, you don't think I'm stealing depth charge and adding it to my vernacular. You have underestimated me. Is there a place for the seltzer in your world, or?
It's in the garage fridge where I keep all the other drinks for Lacey.
Anything that needs an umbrella?
Yeah. No, I mean,
hard
like
pass.
I said, we have them, so they're in my work cooler. I sample those sometimes as well. But in the summertime, when it's 90 plus degrees here in Arkansas and 90% humidity, you open a beer and it's hot in one hole. It's better to dang it, it's better to have a seltzer. I just did what you were worried about.
That's true. We had a whole pre-show meeting about how it's very likely that I will accidentally spit double entendre tonight. You've got to play through.
Unintended entendre.
Yeah, Chris pick me up. Yeah, if you can't count on your boys, man, who can you count on?
We'll leave Chris in the wormhole over there.
I don't know how you segue out of that, so I'll just ask the next question on my sheet. So going back to kind of that tension between the drinker we were at 18 and the drinker we are now, is there still room on your palate for cheap beer? Because I've heard people tell me like, "Oh, I'm a craft snob. I would never drink that." And I give our buddy Tim some crap about his. I mean, Tim. I don't think I can put into words how much Tim loves Miller Lite. And I bust his chops about that. But for you, in all seriousness, is there still a place for cheap beer?
Yeah, most craft beer employees, because we drink craft beer all the time, we have our go-to cheapie. So a lot of brewers would drink PBR or High Life or a Montucky Cold Snack. But yeah, there's always a cheap go-to. I keep High Life or Modelo around here if I'm going to have a post golf beer when I'm still hot pre-shower. A shower beer.
Go-to. Shower beer.
Yeah, for me, I'm a big fan of
shower beers.
I'm not.
Sour beer is one of the best things in the world.
Yeah.
Except there was one time, Chris, when I was chefing at Carino's, I stopped on the way home and I had like $1 to my name. I bought a Keystone Light and went home and drank that in my shower. And I had a moment where I was like, "This is rock bottom. I found it." I like Pacifico is one of my that I keep around over the summer, and then I would not in any stretch call this like a cheap or a throwaway beer. But in South Texas, we're close to Real Ale and Blanco. They have a Mexican style lager called, or is it a Goza that they call Vamonos? It's fantastic. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I like them too. I mean, I'm a big supporter of the craft beer industry as a whole, not just Lost 40. I spend a lot of my time and a lot of my money supporting other breweries around here, stopping at. I mean, I know probably 80% of the Arkansas beer scene people, whether they're brewers or owners or taproom managers or whatever. So they're literally just acquaintances. I can go in there and chat if I'm by myself and have a 30-minute conversation and a beer or two and then be on my way. But so I have my other cheap local go-tos that aren't necessarily cheap or throwaway beer. But yeah, my cheap throwaway ones are going to be High Life and Modelo.
Chris's connections make it great to hang out, like to drop into a place with him, because we've been to a couple of places. I know one in Northwest Arkansas, and I feel like there's one in Oklahoma where we went in, and it's like the place was closed, and the guy let us in, and he was like, "Hey, there's this special thing that I've been working on that nobody's tasted yet, but I'd love your feedback." Like it is, we've had some pretty sweet experiences thanks to Chris's clout in the Arkansas beer
The
scene.
membership has its privileges.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
You're talking about Bradley, especially. Bradley at Hawkmoth used to not be open on Wednesdays, and he would want me to come over there on Wednesdays and try his beer before it was released, give him any feedback, make sure it was cool to be released. I was like, "Man, appreciate it." He goes, "Yeah, I trust your palate." So so I took Aaron in one time, like an hour before they opened, and we had a couple beers with him, and then they opened and left because we weren't cool anymore. Anybody could get in at that point.
Yeah. We only
who
stay
wants
when
to be
we're
a part
cool.
of a club.
I don't hang out with the pores. Okay, so happiest day in the three of our lives is opening day is right around the corner. We are pitchers and catchers report this week.
Yes, they do.
So, Chris, I know heartbreakingly I'm not able to go this year, but you do spring break trip every year. So let's talk. You're sitting out in the right field bleachers of a baseball game. What are you drinking? What's your baseball beer of choice?
If I'm in Arizona, I'm probably drinking like a session IPA. That's what I usually buy, a 6-pack or 12-pack session IPAs, depending on how many games we're going to tailgate at. If I'm in Chicago, probably going to drink something like Half Acre or Revolution, which are two really stalwarts of the Chicago beer industry. Out here, we can get some craft at the Natural Stadium, so it just kind of varies. But they do a High Life night, so I usually drink.
The Northwest Arkansas Naturals, AA, same division as the Missions. Their stadium would make you realize how crappy the Wolf is.
I don't think if you went to any other stadiums, you'd have a trouble saying how crappy the Wolf is.
Baseball has done a great job of embracing beer, as I've seen it. Like, I know, obviously, a big Astros fan. Houston has two. They have the St. Arnold's, and they have a Karbach. But like Pittsburgh and Cleveland both have Fathead in their stadium. Seattle, just because of their proximity to Portland, Seattle has a ton. But baseball, more than the other sports, seems to have really embraced craft beer. Maybe, I don't know if that's just beer and baseball go hand in hand or what.
I don't know. Maybe it's like the whole idea of a pastime versus, actual sport, depending on where you fall on that. Coors Field also has a great beer deck, that upper deck in the outfield. It's really good.
Is that inspired by Boulevard? Because I know Boulevard's right across the street.
No, that's Kansas City. Boulevard, I said Coors Field.
Yeah, I thought they had who's right across the street from them? There's a tasting room, a big one.
They've got a couple.
Right,
they've got
outside
100 breweries in Denver.
Yeah.
10.
Let's talk. We're going to taste some beers. I'm really excited about that. I meant to ask you last week. I'm glad that we're actually back because, it's Breckenridge. Breckenridge has a tasting room right outside of Coors. Yeah.
Also owned by AB now.
I guess on one hand, I'm like, these guys, most of these guys, when you're starting out, it's not like, this is a labor of love for most of these guys. Sure. It's not. And so when one of these guys comes in with, I'm not going to guess at numbers, but I'm assuming some of these are stupid numbers.
Yeah.
I guess I can see it being hard to walk away from that check.
Well, and if it doesn't truly affect the product that gets placed, I mean, Chris was saying something about once your craft brewery is bought out, or the one that you're a fan of or that you drink, you're like, oh, I don't want to drink it now because AB bought it or Coors bought it or whoever. I get that if it starts changing the product, but if the product is the same, I don't see why it matters so much.
Because
what'd you say to that?
The Busch family are terrible people.
That's BUSCH,
yeah,
Busch. Yeah.
They there's a couple books about their bad practices and family practices and some of the illegal stuff they've done over the years and people they've killed. So
beer's dirty.
I really
dirty
just
word.
like they named the stadium Busch because they wouldn't let the family name another stadium Budweiser or after the other beer, and so they built Busch Stadium and then released Busch beer.
So that's the big three. All have stadiums. There's Miller Park, Busch, and then there's Coors
Field.
Two questions I want to ask before we get in. One, you do from time to time through your restaurant concept, you'll do like a beer pairing menu. So again, because I think a lot of people are pretty limited in their understanding of beer. So what does that look like? What are there things that you try to pair, like this style goes with this, or what goes into planning a beer pairing?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different things. Anytime I'm drinking a beer, I'm immediately thinking about what food I could eat with it. I tell my staff when I'm doing training, like, you can eat anything with any drink. It doesn't matter. Do what you want. But if you really want to, you can enhance both by pairing them properly. And so, like, the classic pairing, the most kind of classic pairing I can really think of at the moment is IPAs and spicy food. The dryness and bitterness of an IPA paired with spicy food, it just enhances the other and vice versa. Goes back and forth. But you have to like spice because it will build on you. Things that were only moderately spicy will get spicier.
As long as it's not.
You
jelly
saw the
beans.
Bean Boozled challenge. I'm going to take a break from the spicy for a
I want
bit.
to try them.
I've still got the beans.
I'll send them to you. That can
Yeah,
be part
but,
of your show gift.
You know, if you're going to eat something super fatty and kind of rich, like duck maybe, that would go really well with a Saison because the carbonation of a Saison would lift that off your palate and help kind of move it along. If you're going to eat something, and you can do the cross pairings or you can do similar pairings, right? So if you can do sweet and sweet, or you can do sweet, salty, and vice versa. So there's a lot of different ways
So
to do it.
the only time I've ever tried to pair a beer is I have a coffee rub that I put on
that's
for
good.
steaks, and I paired it with a coffee beer.
Gentleman named Garrett Oliver is sort of the guy who literally wrote the book about beer and food at the brewer's table. Fascinating gentleman. He runs Brooklyn Brewing out.
Oh,
I got
yeah,
to
I've had
meet
some of
him
their beers.
last year. It was really cool. I
you
texted
really?
Lacey immediately. I was like, I just met Garrett Oliver. And then 2 days later, I got to actually have like a 5-10 minute conversation with him, which was really cool.
that's amazing.
One of my beer
That's crazy.
heroes.
When you plan these menus, does a chef give you a menu and say, pair these beers? Or do you go, hey, I want to highlight these beers, let's collaborate, or a little bit of both?
So, a little bit of both. So in the past, we were just kind of using the things that are already on our menu. And then our beer list at Big Orange changes a lot. So I would just pick and choose different sandwiches and salads to go with different beers that we currently had on. I talked with one of our owners today, and we're going to start those up again this summer. And he's going to do off-menu items. So it's going to be like 10 to 20 people probably. And it'll be me pairing, and then I'll just kind of talk them through the pairings as we go through. So they'll get like 3-4 courses, and they'll get little 5-ounce beers with each one. And yeah, it's fun.
This sounds like it needs to be a fat face road trip.
Shout out to Big Orange for their hot chicken sandwich. It is best one I've had outside of Miss Hattie's in Nashville.
It's really good.
It's really, really, really good. I'm gonna cough. Hold on one second. Sorry, I'm fighting some allergies over on this end. Is it even possible, last thing before we get into the tasting, if I were to ask you what are your 3 favorite styles, is that even a question for you that you're even able to answer? Or
Yeah. Pretty easy. Lambic is my favorite style, and it's Lambic is an appellation for beer that's made in the Bruges region. That's completely wrong. In the region of Brussels, that it is wild yeast inoculated. They don't pitch any yeast to it, and then it's barrel aged. So your young lambic will be 1 year barrel aged, and then your goose will be a blend of 1, 2, and 3 year old. So that's
the
my favorite
lambic is going to have sour qualities, right? Like it's not a sour, but it will have those
right
vibes.
It's sour, it's funky, it's barnyardy, it's grassy. It can do a bunch of different things depending on the barrel, the temperature that time of year, what area they got the yeast, what area of the country they're in for the yeast. So Cantillon is sort of in not downtown, in the city of Brussels, and Dreyfontein is about 30 minutes south in a town called Lot, and their beers are wildly different because you got to think that the microflora and microfauna up there are completely different in the city near a train station versus out in the country. So you're getting completely different kind of yeast getting into the beer, and then you throw them in barrels. You get temperature fluctuations in a city versus the country. So, yeah.
We had some lambics you brought a couple when we were in Oklahoma City a few years back, and I fell in love. When sours became the rage, I thought I didn't like them because my mind went to, again, second time I'm mentioning it, but to Keystone Light, bitter beer face. And there certainly are sours that will just turn you inside out. But, there's some really good flavor in sours.
That's the thing with lambic that I love is they're not just sour for sour's sake. The sour is a byproduct of the yeast, whereas a lot of American styles of beer, especially the ones that are over fruited, they go for that really, really tartness. And I don't mind it because I love lemonade, whatever. Those are fine. If I had to pick my other 2 styles, IPA is like the 1A, 1B with lambic. Still on IPA head. and then probably barrel aged stout.
Oh yeah. Do you have a do you like I know they're doing some like, oh, this stout was aged in Merlot barrels or in bourbon barrels, or you just like the oak barrel aged flavor?
No, I mean bourbon barrel is probably my preference. I really like.
Yeah.
I've had some really good apple brandy barrel aged ones as well.
Oh, I bet that's really good,
interesting
actually.
flavor. But yeah, just a straight bourbon barrel aged stout, no adjuncts or anything outside the four main ingredients. So your coffee, your vanilla, fruit, those are all adjuncts.
People sleep on stouts, man. Stouts are good for everything from, I mean, they're good beer. They're great dessert. Like I said, your dad, Mike Pop, he was the first time I ever had he had that old Rasputin, and you put some vanilla bean ice cream with it and a stout float. It was exceptional.
Sounds awesome.
If you get a really sweet beer that's too sweet for your palate, you don't really feel like eating, you can always throw it in a can and make a reduction and put it over some cheesecake too. It really can kind of set that off.
I'd be hard pressed to find a beer too sweet. So
Yeah, Kevin likes it.
Fair
Kevin
enough.
likes it
So you
sweet.
can get some that are a little syrupy that can become a little taxing after a while, no matter how good they are.
As we get ready to open this first beer, another thing I didn't ask you last time was I think can art is some of my favorite part of the craft beer scene. So I'm looking at the Blackberry Bramble, and some of we did two really, really cool collaboration beers last time that had beautiful cans. I wanted to know, like, does the brewer ever, like, is that part of their artistic expression, the can art, or is that somebody else, or is it?
Yeah,
It just seems like there's just some really cool.
the brewer probably has some input, with the naming and like where that idea of a beer came from or whatever. On the collaborations you mentioned, one of them was with American Solera and Arkansas-based record label Garhole Records, and one of their artists designed that label. For a lot of our can art, it's designed in-house by one of our owners, Amber Brewer, who went to the Savannah College of Art and Design. She's
Amber Brewer, what a great name for a beer girl.
Yeah, she's a genius. She's a wonderful lady. She gets a little bit of help from on the illustration outside after she comes up with the idea and kind of pitches it and everything. From a guy named Caleb Pritchett, I may have that wrong. Will Kreck, and then Big Bot Design. I know that one's right. But
This one is stellar. They did a really good job on Blackberry Bramble.
so
that's a great can.
for any of our beers that have fruit in them,
It
obviously
smells fantastic.
we use
So we're gonna walk.
real fruit. We don't use any artificial anything, no syrups. So real
I didn't know
fruit
that.
puree. Yeah, makes a difference. That's why you get a little bit of
That
tartness to
smells
it. And it's
fantastic.
not just sweet.
So as we drink these, what I thought we would do is you're gonna walk us through, for somebody who's never done a tasting. How do you do it? What are you looking for? But then I kind of want to get like Kevin's kind of Joe Six-Pack react to these beers, because I think that's a big hope of mine, is that people maybe will watch this episode, and people who maybe aren't really into beer, it would go, oh, well, maybe I've got something. So this is a fruited wheat beer. Is that right? Yep.
So the first thing you do if you're really trying to dig in and taste something officially, like if you're doing like a beer judging competition, first thing you do is you taste with your eyes. So you describe the color, you look at the bubbles, the head retention. Obviously, when you're making small pours, it's tough to get that proper head that you'd get on a full pour. But you look at the carbonation, any color that you see. You could turn the glass side to side and kind of check out some of the viscosity if it has any, if it's leaving any legs on the glass. But it's just appearance is your first thing. Second thing you do is you go in for the aroma. I always say pull from what you know. Your scent memory is your strongest memory. So for me, if I smell something that has honeysuckle, I'm immediately in my grandmother's back garden because she had a honeysuckle fence. And so if I smell honeysuckle, it's right there. There's a couple other major scents that really get to me, but I tell people don't try to be too fancy or frilly with your words. Pull from something you know, and I can work with that and kind of adjust where you are on that. The third thing you do is when you take your first sip, you don't think about flavor. You're just thinking about mouthfeel and your palate experience. What this does is it breaks up the aroma and the flavor, so you don't have what's called a follow-on effect. That way you don't just immediately think it tastes like it smelled. So if you just focus on uh, how it feels in your mouth, people are fond of saying that you taste differently in parts of your mouth, and you don't really do that. You do taste differently with your like different parts of your mouth. So your mouth doesn't taste differently. It doesn't have different segments in it, but you do taste differently with different parts of your mouth. So you'll notice dryness more in the back and a little more carbonation in your cheeks sometimes, or some tartness on your tongue or whatever. And then after that, you go into your flavor and you talk about whatever flavor, again, pulling from whatever words you're comfortable with. Just, things that make you feel, you don't have to over zhuzh it, right? It's just beer. And then you just
Proper head, and we're anti-zhuzh here on Feed Your Fat
Anti-zhuzh.
Face.
Yeah.
and then, so I just think that at the end you do overall, like, how'd the beer come together for you? Did you like the smell but not the taste? Did you like how it tasted in the front but you didn't like the finish? So on and so forth. Those are your 5 main components about how to do the beer. Away we go.
So I'll get your view. I really, as one who doesn't typically love all wheats, I think this is really well done. It's got a really light mouthfeel, like it's not syrupy or heavy. It's really fresh. But I'm curious where you're at, Kev.
This tastes like breakfast to me. The berries and the wheat taste kind of like a grain pancake with the berries in it.
All right. See, I like that. That's what I'm talking about. Pulling from what you know. That I love that.
It is kind of berry.
Yeah.
This is like a great breakfast beer.
It's like berry forward. Like you get the berries right away.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's fantastic. It's sweet without being sweet.
Yeah. That,
sugary
that natural
sweet.
fruit sweetness. You saying that actually made me
yeah.
think of like crunch berries. It's got like a crunch berry note.
Oh my gosh.
But not with milk. If you used
haven't had-
water or something like that, you didn't have milk and you used water.
I'm all up for some crunchberry too.
Okay, how about this? Hear me out. Blackberry bramble with milk sugars. So like a cream
Sure.
ale, and then it would be just like you're having crunch berries.
Yeah.
Well, breakfast is covered.
You don't even have to give me any credit for that. Just make it and send me one. And, that sounds delicious. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. This would be a good. All joking aside, if there was an early morning tea time, I could drink this on the golf course.
Yeah.
Or
This
is not like 6 a.m., but like early morning, like 10.
Oh, this can replace the breakfast smoothie. We had a wheat beer last time.
Yeah.
What was that beer?
That was the Biohazard.
That was also a fantastic beer. The wheat beer. I don't know what it is about it. It's just it's something I really like about them.
You probably, if it's wheat that you're drawn to there, it's probably a little bit of the mouthfeel or how it travels across your palate. Yeah, that was a wheat lager we had last time, so a little bit different. This being an ale, that's just a difference in fermentation and yeast. But yeah, both wheat.
Yeah, very, very good.
Good.
That was I really enjoyed that. This is the Scotch Ale, Kilt Optional. I thought Kevin would like that title. This is a winter seasonal. Oh, let's talk about for people who are maybe new to it. Let's talk about ABVs and what that means. So alcohol by volume.
Mm-hmm.
So interestingly, that wheat is a little higher than I would have thought at 6.7. It drinks more like a 4 or 5 pointer to me. Like it just feels
it didn't
light.
feel like it had much in there.
It's not 6.7.
Isn't that what it says?
No.
Oh, 6%.
There you
Just 6% even. Yeah. I don't have my reading glasses,
that's a
Chris.
zero.
I'm quite old these days.
Well, the reason I know that is
Zeros and sevens look alike.
in Arkansas, we have one of those weird state beer liquor law things that to be able to sell your beer in grocery stores and gas stations, non-liquor store places, it has to be 6.3% or less.
Oh.
Anything above 6.3% has to be sold only in liquor stores.
So tell me about, I guess I would have 2 questions on Kilt Optional. Explain the whole Scotch Ale, wee heavy thing, and what as a seasonal, what differentiates this from, you guys have a Scotch Ale that you do year round, right? So what differentiates the two here?
We have a Bock we do year round. We don't have a...
Oh yeah, that's Puffy Jacket?
No, that's a Baltic Porter that we only do in the fall.
Dang it.
Love Honey is...
I like Buffy Jacket.
Puppy Jack's one of my top 3 beers. No, Love Honey Bach is our year.
Oh yeah,
Um,
we had that offline last week.
yeah, so Scotch Ale is going to be a very malt forward, um, low bitterness, low hop, uh, easy drinking, slightly sweet. Can be ours is not, but they can be a little bit peaty or smoky. Um, ours is not that. It is just a straightforward, middle of the road Scotch Ale.
This one is exceptional.
I mentioned earlier that I had forgotten that I like Scotch ales until we made it. It's not a sexy style, but yeah, it's solid. And we released this November, I think, November, December. It's the first time we've ever released it, so it's really a brand new.
I don't dig when they get too smoky or peaty. This one is perfect. I think.
Smelling this, I was like, this is not my kind of beer.
Yeah.
I actually really like it though because it's not overpowering with the way some of these, whatever this kind of beer is, usually taste.
Yeah. And
They usually taste like the ground.
they taste like the ground. That's how I described gin. I said gin tastes like mowed grass smells.
Yeah, usually these taste like your first attempt at a headfirst diving catch. This is actually pretty good. It's not my style of beer, but I would drink this.
I told you this one could be a sneaky one for him because I think it's very approachable and palatable for people who are not. If someone comes to me and says, "Hey, I don't like hops. I don't like IPAs a whole lot." Okay, what do you like? Do you like darker? I don't really love darker. I always tell people not to be beer racists. Don't judge a beer just by its, because you can have
Dark beers matter.
light colored beers that are very strong, and you can have dark colored beers that are very light. I mean, Guinness itself is very light beer. 4% calories.
Yeah, just smelling it, I'm like, that's not one for me. But when I taste it, I really.
Well, I was going to say to people, if you're out there and you're kind of nervous about, I don't know what beers I'll like or don't like, get some friends together and do a tasting like this, because if you have 4 people there, the worst thing that happens is you're committing to 3 ounces of a beer that you don't like. And that's a lot. I mean, we talk about the 13,000, but that's a lot of what you've done is you go to a tasting and everybody's having a couple of ounces of several beers, right?
Yeah. I mean, and we have a rule when we do that too. Like, hey, if it's not your jam, ask anybody else at the table if they want your pour. And if not, pour it out. No one's going to be offended. Like, we all know that not every beer is to everybody's liking. So,
life's too short to drink bad beer.
Right.
Well, that's why they make so many of them.
And one note about beer racists: also don't be a regular. That's another important thing.
Correct. Feed Your Fat Face and Lost 40 are both against racism, patently, just across the board, unilaterally and without exception.
I've been using that saying for a long time, but I don't want it to come off too flippant where someone thinks I'm definitely not.
Yeah, we recognize there's a little bit of tongue-in-cheek in that, and we recognize it's trying times, but I don't know. We're just trying to laugh and have a good time.
Right.
Your beard's looking spectacular, man.
It's looking very gray.
Yeah. You're starting to get those gray streaks.
Starting to.
Yeah.
Jesus.
That's wisdom, man.
Chris, mine is getting mostly gray on the sides. I'm filling out a lot of gray. I went back today, and I don't know why, but I went back and looked at a couple of sermons of mine from pre-COVID. And one, I was probably 45 pounds lighter, but the beard was still its original color. And I was like, man, COVID, the sack of potatoes.
The 2020s have aged our group.
If you were in any kind of leadership in any field, 2020 was a rough year for you.
Yeah, it had to have been.
It was
rough. 2020 stands for how many pounds you probably gained. Like,
yeah,
not
that
you,
is. I actually weighed.
Just everybody.
No, I weighed 2,020 pounds. Well, we stayed home and I learned how to bake bagels.
Right.
Like, come on. Like, that was my whole life.
Like, how did 2020 go for you? I gained 25 pounds.
I straight up tell people, they're like, how was it? I'm like, dude, I ate my feelings for 3 years, 100%. It was because of that I had to learn how to name feelings. Like, Bree would ask me, how are you feeling about a thing? And you go, and I would just tell her, I would go, I don't know what to name it, but I'm feeling a lot of it. And so that was part of my journey, is I had to learn feelings have names.
Yeah.
This is the guy I've been excited for. One, because I've had it before and know that it's awesome. But two, I would say that the double IPA, I'm weirdly, except for West Coast hazies, I'm actually indifferent about most IPAs. But gosh, I love double IPAs. What's the difference, Chris, between an IPA and a double IPA?
7.5%.
The number of times they IPA?
Yeah.
The ABV?
Yeah. ABV. Anytime you see the term double or imperial, that just denotes that it's above 7.5%. And that's the widely regarded number. There are some people out there that go 8%, but 7.5 is the widely regarded number. So if you see imperial or double, those are interchangeable.
So what kind of hops do you use in Snake Party?
We have like 4 or 5 different hops in here.
Do I smell citron?
Citra is what you're smelling, yes. We also have a Zaka in there, which
Citron's a bad French car, right?
That's a Citroen.
Yeah.
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 That's how I spelled it in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's like 4 or 5 hops. What's that?
Is this orangey or grapefruit? What is this?
You tell me.
Tastes like, or it smells like an orange. It's not very sweet, or a grapefruit.
Yeah, I think that last week we had very grapefruit. I would call this one more tangerine to orange than what we had last week.
Yeah, I get like a lot of blood orange notes
I don't know. There's
in this one.
yeah. There you go. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I love double IPAs. Can't get enough.
This is a big one too. So.
Whew.
Not quite
This
as
one tastes big. Last week's
That one.
Last week's double did not taste big. It was sneaky, but this guy, Yeah. Oh, I'm drinking a beer.
Yeah.
Yeah. This one. This one isn't the subtle, dude.
This is 10%, so this is not. Let's pound a few of these before we go out.
No, and a funny story, when we first released this, John Beachboard, our owner, gave me like a 4-pack of them, but they were blank cans. He was like, "Here, try our new IPA." He just said our new IPA. So I go home and drink all 4 of them. All 4. Call him the next day. I was like, "John,
Nighty night."
I was like, "What is going on? What is with
Chris,
this
it's
beer?"
cumulative. You drank 40% alcohol.
Yeah. I said, "What is going on with this IPA? It's pretty strong." He's like, "Yeah, it's 10.5%. I was like, "You didn't tell me that. You said it was an IPA." He goes, "Oh, well, it's a double A." I was like, "Thanks a lot, John." Appreciate
Yeah, that's important information.
And
That's an important piece of the puzzle.
that's why you do it, so you can serve responsibly. Shout out to John for not serving me responsibly.
What's the range on double IPAs? Like, how high? What's the kind of the high water mark ABV on a double IPA?
It's kind of silly because above that, there's, I think in a year or 2 years, there may be a triple IPA designation because there's some breweries that have been saying triple IPA. But as of yet, it's not a category that they're giving awards for, so it's not recognized.
It's not going to be like 12%? Or
I mean, Dogfish Head has its 120-minute IPA, and that's 18%.
Oh, that's true.
17%. So
that's actually a great beer.
So it may change. Hazy IPAs weren't a category until 5 or 6 years ago, right? It was just all IPA, and if you made a hazy one, you made a hazy one. So they just went in the same category. Then they broke off and splintered. But I think with the way they're using hops nowadays and the way they're able to use hops, and then they're also changing the way you can use yeast. You can get stylized yeast. It's getting the yeast to even taste like hops and be even hazier. I think we're going to get some triple IPA categories coming up festivals.
I liked Tanuki from last week better than Snake Party, but I still really like Snake
video
Party.
Game one?
Yeah,
that was really
so
good.
That was a great
this
beer.
one is much more.
That was the one that would really kind of sneak up on you. That was,
Yes. Yeah, that's a little bit softer and juicier. This one's more of the classic West Coast IPA, so it's got more of that pininess and that, fallen free sap and things like that.
That orange, that grapefruit, that tart.
Last week's was just
It was a great beer.
yeah, one of my favorites.
Yeah,
It's
Kevin
just
shocked himself.
phenomenal.
Like
I'm a huge fan of this one.
Chris, to the guy who's afraid, or the gal who's afraid to take a step out of their beer pocket, whatever that is, the Michelob Ultra or the I Drink Dos Equis, what would you tell them? Would you tell them just stay in your pocket, or would you encourage them?
Well, I think life is better.
And how do you go about expanding that horizon?
I think life is better when you try more things. I mean, we have a rule in our house: the kids aren't allowed to say they don't like something if they've never tried it. Once they try it, they can tell us if they don't like it. I try to get my staff when I'm doing my education, my seminars or training sessions with them. They have to try everything if they're of age. If they don't like it, they can spit it out. We have spit cups there; they can spit it out, but they have to try it. And I encourage them just to have an open mind. I'm like, look, guys, the more you critique it and the more you think about it, you don't have to be fussy and hold a pinky out of it. But the more you critique about it and think about it, the more you're gonna possibly enjoy it. It's that little 2-year-old sort of mentality of like, you tell them to do something, they say why. You say because I said so. Well, why? So I do the same thing when I'm kind of quizzing them on beer. It's like, oh, this smells like fruit. What kind of fruit? Citrus fruit. What kind of citrus fruit? An orange. What part of the orange? And I just try to get them to explore deeper. So I think everyone should try everything as much as they can. Most breweries will give you free samples.
Yep.
A lot of bar, like tap room type bars will too. So if you want a sample, just ask for a sample, and if it's not your jam, it's not your jam. Because at the end of the day, you should drink what you like, but you're not still eating chicken nuggets and peanut butter and jelly for every single meal. So you probably shouldn't drink Miller Lite for every single meal. You should,
Amen, brother.
Should try other things, branch, and that's cocktails, that's food, that's beer, that's wine, whatever it is. I just think you should experience more and try to get more out of life than just the basics.
Yeah, I'm up to peanut butter and honey sandwiches.
Is there a beer, Chris, that if you go to a place and you're like, I'll have a beer, and they're like, all we have is blank, that you would be like, hard, I'll pass?
Yeah, Bud Light or Budweiser or
same.
Ultra
Same.
or anything Anheuser-Busch. I'll just have water or tea at that point.
I'm with you. Well, I have a couple of important questions for you
just
before
the
we.
brand
Yeah.
that you'll pass because
I mean,
of
it's
it?
also
Or-
horrible beer.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so
No, I have a very strong
like,
stance on
again,
that, so.
I've very recently gotten into craft beer. It's only been a couple of years. So I historically drank Coors Light.
Right.
And so, that, kind of a watery,
Sure.
nothing beer.
Cowboys own
Not
official rodeo
kind
soda.
of a watery nothing beer.
Hey, okay.
That's it.
But just leave it there. But I always thought beers like Budweiser or whatever were like thicker. They just had this heavier,
Awfulness about them.
yeah. I mean, like a good.
I mean, I shouldn't talk too much trash because Natural Light is like the bottom of the Bud Light barrel that they couldn't sell as Bud Light. It's the like, you're not quite good enough to be Bud Light, so we're repackaging you.
Sure, but still, what is it that makes even those bigger beers, the bigger brands, different? Like Coors Light feels so watery, and Budweiser feel like it's the bottom part of a puddle on the highway.
Well, I mean, just because they're the same style of beer, which is American Light Lager, doesn't mean they're the exact same beer. Right? They're made by different breweries in different regions. They all have their own recipes, even if they're very, very similar. I mean, you could give the exact same recipe to 10 different craft brewers, and you'd get 10 different beer, because even with every single detail, like stepped out for you and temperatures and everything, because your equipment's going to be different. Your brewing practices by the head brewer is going to be different. You don't know how healthy the yeast is. Maybe like one person has healthier yeast, one person has more sluggish yeast, so you get a different ABV. So yeah, it's all in.
Okay.
Just because it's the same style. I mean, right now you're having a double IPA. You liked last week's better. Well, this is a double IPA too, and they're only 0.5% different. But that's, again, it's the same style of beer, but it's not the same. So.
Gotcha.
Before we land the plane, I've got a couple of really, really important questions.
Okay.
First off, what is Hey Ryan, Hey Dad?
So we need to take it back about 25 years to find the origin of Hey Ryan, Hey Dad. You and I were helping a friend of ours move in, and that's when we discovered I have a unique ability to drink beer very fast.
It's
uncanny.
I hesitate to say this, but it's God-given.
It's
Your mouth works differently. You and who is, I'm totally blanking out, the famous trumpet player with his
Dizzy Gillespie?
Yeah. You and Dizzy Gillespie are the only two guys.
Him, Dizzy Gillespie, and Joey Chestnut.
yeah, fair. No, so yeah, I've carried that tradition for many, many years. And then I started doing it in craft beer, in the craft beer world a couple years back, because people were getting really hoity-toity about the secondary market. Like, my beer's worth this much and my beer's worth that much. It's like baseball cards used to be. Like, you got it for 75 cents in a stale piece of bubble gum. You're like, it's not worth that much. It's a piece of cardboard. So I would just chug these really expensive beers just for fun. Just like, oh yeah, I'll do this. So Ryan got TikTok. I had to monitor her. She encouraged me to make some videos. I decided.
So you're not a creeper.
Right. Yeah, that's what she called me. I didn't know what I would do. She said, you're kind of funny and you drink beer fast. I said, okay, that's the plan. So we've been doing it for a little over a year now. I just tell her a joke and then drink a beer. I did that last week. I cuvee the beers. She's not feeling well tonight, so I cannot do a new video for you. So you'll have to use.
That's okay. I decided what we're going to do is in a little bit when we go, hey, that's it, sign off, rather than play the music, we're going to cut to a Hey Ryan, Hey Dad, and let you watch that. Ryan is Chris's daughter, my niece. She's spectacular and fantastic. Ryan and I have always connected because she has such a dry and biting sense of humor. It just is, it's phenomenal.
These are great videos.
Yes. Oh, and Ryan is special funny. Like, yeah. She's next level.
What's funny, though, is the times he tells a dad joke, because they're dad jokes, that he finishes the beer before she gets it.
So you can use the one. You can use the one from last week if you want to, that I did after the thing, or you can use another one. I don't really care; it doesn't matter. But yeah, it's just a fun way to hang out with my 17-year-old.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, we have to create those awesome things. Yeah, I keep certain snacks in my pantry.
My daughter's 4, yours is 20, and his is 17. I can't slow down time fast enough to.
Yeah. There are certain foods I keep in my pantry that I'll never eat, but I know that Abby will come get them to take back to. Yeah, so
you have no intention of eating.
Correct,
them,
but
you buy them every time you're at the store.
It's Abby made.
AK.
Yeah. So, question number 2, Chris. What? You're a really good and chill interview. So, what other food things are you passionate about so we can have you on again?
Well, I like bourbon too, so we can talk about bourbon. I know less about it, but we can drink some. No,
I feel like the vibe would be entirely different on a bourbon podcast.
We can make cocktails, make some old fashions. No, I've been in the restaurant business for roughly 30 years, like you. Kind of done it all on both sides of the industry. So yeah, I'll come back on, and I don't even have to be the interviewee. I'll just fill in for Kevin if Kevin can't make it one time, or
So can we come?
So Kevin's got a replacement.
Can we come to Siloam and do a remote episode with you?
You have a standing invite to be here anytime, and Kevin's now welcome as well. So yeah, I mean,
let's go to a Naturals game and do something at a Naturals game. We can do a ballpark food stop at a Naturals game.
How are the hot dogs at a Naturals game?
If you go on like the regular nights, they're fine. If you go on like the dollar hot dog nights, they're not so great.
No, not dollar dog night. No.
Does Arvest Park have anything? Are they known
food
for? Like
they've got like hog nachos, which is like pulled pork nachos that are pretty good.
Yeah, because of Woo Pig Suey and all that.
Because I can go and I can do some damage at a ballpark.
We could do. Chris and I could talk about something while Kevin just humiliates himself with quantities of food eaten. Yeah. He's a machine.
We have a really good barbecue place up here that you've actually referenced on the show before, Wright's Barbecue. Jordan's a friend of mine.
Wright's is pretty
Wright's
good.
Is really good. They're
It's better than pretty good. It's solid.
Oh.
It is. My favorite barbecue is in Arkansas, but my favorite's McClard's.
Yeah. They tried to open up a place up here, and it did not take. And so they just have the original location down.
Oh, I can't imagine not going to the original.
We should come up and do 2 episodes, and on one of them, Chris, we should have your beautiful bride sit with us and talk chicken science.
That's up to you. That sounds like a very boring episode.
Lacey is a chicken doctor. We'll have you sit in and make fun of her.
Oh, that'll go well for me. Yeah, it'll be funny.
Yeah,
no.
It'll be funny.
It would be funny, but no.
Ooh, you know what? Have Ryan sit there and make fun of her.
Or we can have Ryan on, and she could talk about the 4 things that she'll actually eat. That would be fun. Yeah. As we wind down, do you have any parting words of beer wisdom for our friends?
Said it a little bit ago, but try everything and drink what you like.
Try everything and drink what you like. That's great advice. Man, I can't tell you how much it means. One, I probably don't say it enough, but I'm so proud of how you have leaned into your passion and made a career out of it, dude. You're seriously an inspiration to me in that. Like, you just followed your dream and you did it.
And I love you.
And you're killing it. Yeah, I love you too. I really appreciate you making space to come and sit down with us for a while. And I'm dead serious. We'll find time when the AA season is in swing. Let's come up and let's
I've got
make it
room.
happen.
Y'all are
Absolutely.
welcome anytime.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on again.
All right. Yeah. So on that note, stay tuned. We're going to kick it to some Hey Ryan, Hey Dad, so you can check that out. Follow them on TikTok.
Right.
If you could do us a favor while you're here, like and subscribe wherever you're watching it. It's a big help for us.
And if you don't mind, give it a share.
Yeah, give it a share.
Subject somebody else to this.
But yeah, thanks for tuning in. Here's Hey Ryan, Hey Dad.
Hey, friends. So I just finished doing a podcast with my best friend and his partner in that podcast. It's called Feed Your Fat Face. We're going to tag him in the post here. But it's a food podcast. You guys should go check it out if you're so inclined. Pretty funny if you're into podcasts. But you can also listen to me talk for more than a minute and a half if you, again, are so inclined. I don't know if you need to do that. But yeah, we talked about Lost 40. We tried 3 beers. And so I'm going to do something I haven't done on this before. I'm going to do a cuvee. I'm going to blend the 3 beers we tried on the podcast and drink them together. So, nighty-night.
What is that right?
Yep.
Is that okay?
Tanuki suit. And
Wrong.
Biohazard. Oh, it wouldn't matter. Biohazard. I was holding it up. I wasn't going for it. Maybe I was. I don't know.
You definitely were. You were going for it.
Hey, Ryan.
Hey, Dad.
So, one time I told your mom
Oh, no.
that I had a crush on Beyonce.
Okay. Legit.
And she said, whatever floats your boat. I said, no. Beyonce.
Sink it.
I said, no. Beyonce, not buoyancy.
I thought you were talking about her butt.
Buoyancy floats your boat.
Yes.
Beyonce is her name.
Yes.
That's the joke. You have to stop interrupting me.
Okay.
Okay. Well, cheers. Go check out the podcast.